In today's video, low carb diet mistakes.
All by myself.
Hey guys, it's Paul Rebella from ProPhysique.com. Welcome back to today's video. We are going to discuss low carb diet mistakes, but first I want to mention my man Steve, Science with Steve, Stephen Bogran. He's got a channel and he's got some interesting topics. What was yesterday's topic?
Yesterday's topic was meal timing.
Meal timing. So I'm going to link his channel below, give him some love, and let's talk about today's topic, which was again Science with Steve's decision. We're going to talk about some low carb diet mistakes and perhaps some of the things that go into like a complex versus a simple carbohydrate, right? And what some of the thoughts behind those are. So when it comes to a low carbohydrate dieting approach, which Stephen and I work with people that are trying to get lean, and carbohydrates, I would say, are the biggest variable in that process, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
So what do you think are the issues that most people associate with complex versus, let's say, simple carbohydrates?
So I think for me, what I normally see is labeling of good versus bad kind of food options. Normally what we'll see is complex carbohydrates, things like sweet potatoes and vegetables.
Yeah.
They're normally typically idealized as, they're good foods, they're healthy, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, maybe something like a white potato or even like some processed sugars or flours and breads can sometimes be classified as bad because they're a simpler carb source, more fast.
So where does that come from? Do you feel it's just from a volume standpoint, or do you more like an ease to overeat calorie standpoint?
So I think it's a little bit of the ease to overeat calorie standpoint, and a lot of it about misunderstanding kind of how insulin works. And the idea that a lot of these simpler carb sources have been linked to insulin response, right?
Okay, so let's get into this because this is interesting to me, because I've noticed a lot lately that people are demonizing insulin. Explain to my people what insulin is and what it does.
So what insulin is it is something that is secreted by your body when blood glucose comes up. Right. So essentially your body turns everything into glucose as energy, right? So all carbs eventually become glucose, whether they're simple or complex. So when you have excessive blood glucose going on, insulin is released, and what that does is it helps to shuttle nutrients into the cell, right? So
he said cell.
However, what a lot of people fail to understand is that insulin can only shuttle into the cell the nutrients that are present.
So a lot of people take that and extrapolate that insulin shuttles things to fat cells.
Right.
Which is part of the story. But when our energy balance is actually in a deficit, we are going to burn off any extra stored fat. We're going to be in a caloric deficit. We're actually going to create a place where we're losing body fat, not storing it. So just because you store it, our bodies are always in a state of storing and using fuel. So I think when I see people talk about these low carb diets as magic because they prevent you from secreting insulin, they're missing the point.
Right.
Those diets work because they're low calorie.
Exactly.
Low carb, low calorie diets that prevent you from secreting insulin are going to be low calorie. It's just the way it is. If you look at them, but yet they pass them off as magic because the insulin fairy is going to come into your home and put a bunch of fat on you while you sleep. Bodybuilders love insulin, okay? It actually benefits us because guess where else carbohydrates can go? Steven?
Into the muscle.
That's right. And what can you do when you have muscle?
Oh, you can lift heavy things.
That's right.
And you can look good with less clothes.
So we get down to the truth of the matter is lifestyle, guys. Okay, so your dieting mistake is that you're thinking it's an insulin issue, but you're missing the point that it's actually a lifestyle issue. So let's talk about what are some of the benefits of, say, a complex carbohydrate. And I don't want anyone to think here we're saying you should not eat complex carbohydrates. There are some benefits.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're getting our facts straight when we talk about it. So what are some of the benefits of a complex carbohydrate?
So I think the biggest benefits for the complex carbohydrates are, one, nutrient density, right? So complex carbohydrates tend to be things like whole wheat breads, full grains, vegetables, sweet potatoes, and they just have more micronutrients. So in terms of getting your micronutrients from food, they're a lot better of a way to do that, as a lot of the simpler carb sources are more processed things and have less nutrients.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about nutrients, we're talking about micronutrients, okay? So something like sugar, pure sugar, does not have much micronutrient density. Something like a vegetable, a fruit, is going to have a lot more micronutrients. So there might actually be some benefit. So we're not saying avoid complex carbohydrates because they're not beneficial. They are beneficial.
Absolutely.
You also, when we're talking about dieting, we're talking a lot of times about food volume. A big plate of food is just more appetizing. You know, when you compare the volume of food related to a complex source versus a simple source, you're going to get more volume, more bang for your buck in that meal, which might help with satiety. It might help you with consistency, and therefore it's probably going to be better in the long term. But it doesn't mean you can't include some simple carbs, some sugars, some treats, if you fit them in your goals, keeping in mind your daily calories, your protein, and your fiber. Okay? There is no such thing as a bad food. And I know I say that all the time, and unless you're in a disease state, I truly believe that. However, there are better choices.
Absolutely.
As we diet down, we don't like to get into the habit of eating a lot of sweets. I notice if I eat something sweet when I'm dieted down, I start to crave more sweets.
Yep.
It also impacts the blood sugar much quicker. So you get these hunger spikes, okay, and energy spikes, which you want to stay away from when you're dieting, because the first thing to go when you're dieting is you're just going to start reaching for junk food, okay? So this is where I do believe there is value in creating a meal plan, being consistent, and using complex carbohydrates. I do not believe, however, there is any magic to it. If you equate for calories, as hard as it would be between complex and simple carbs, you would get the same result. You might not feel as good because you're not getting your micronutrients.
Yep.
What else you want to add, Stephen?
I would say the other big thing is fiber content as well.
Yes.
So fiber content, not only is it going to help with GI health and then making sure that everything's moving through properly, but it's also going to help us with some other cardiovascular health benefits as well. So we see that certain types of fiber and more fibrous food intakes can also help with things like atherosclerosis risk.
Okay.
So that's
hit him with some science with Steve numbers. How much fiber should we be getting in?
So what I always typically recommend is 10 to 20% of your total daily carbs at least for fiber.
Okay.
Right? So if you're on a lower calorie diet and you process fiber well, I think it's definitely okay to go over that. However, if you find that you're having excessive GI issues, distress, bloating, cramping, those kind of things, then sometimes it's beneficial to make sure that we go on the lower end of that fiber intake and see if it doesn't help those symptoms kind of dissipate a little bit.
Yeah, one of the most common things that I see with my clients is that when they start to get low calorie, they start to over-index on the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Then they're complaining of abdominal pain and bloating. Well, those things are very hard to digest. You compound that when you're dieting and you're on a low-calorie diet because digestion goes slower. So we can actually do too much vegetables. That can actually be an issue. So paying attention to how much you're digesting and how good you feel is going to be a big part of it. And likewise, let's say you're using a refeed approach, or you're having a diet break, or you're having some higher carbohydrate days. I try to remind them, let's keep some simple carbs in there, because if you're used to 100 grams of carbs a day and you're eating a lot of veggies, and you simply double the number of veggies you're getting that day to get your refeed numbers, you're probably going to have some issues instead of just adding a simple carbohydrate. What else?
Makes it easy. So and so that's really what I would say in terms of the fiber. It's just keep it to where you're feeling good.
Yeah. So I suggest about 10 to 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories, and variable.
Right.
Like, we all digest fiber differently. Some people prefer a higher amount, some people prefer a lower amount. So if you notice some digestive issues, that might be one of the first places you look.
Absolutely.
And then let's talk about, real quickly, now we've done a video on this in the past, but the fiber within carbohydrates, do we count that to our daily carbohydrate intake?
Absolutely. So you have soluble and insoluble fiber. The actual bacteria within your gut can digest fiber, soluble fibers, and it releases calories that are able to be used that still get absorbed within your intestines.
Now the big difference there is that it doesn't impact your blood sugar the same way. So if you are, say, in a ketogenic diet or using ketosis, you can actually probably stay in ketosis despite the fact that you're getting a decent amount of carbohydrates because of the way they're being processed. You're not impacting blood sugar. a different topic for a different time.
Yes.
But it is something to consider. We personally, as coaches, this is just our personal choice. We track fiber as a part of our carbohydrates. We do not subtract them. Some of the food labels in like Australia, they actually separate the fiber. So I have my clients in Australia actually account for that. So I think that's gonna be it for today. We just wanted to go over with you guys the reason that complex and simple carbohydrates kind of get, put on a pedestal or demonized, where I think they're actually much closer in importance. And when you have higher carbohydrate days, I feel like sugary carbs are actually better for your digestive system to get in and to use them. And when you are getting low in calories and low in carbohydrates, that's when food volume becomes very important. Micronutrient density becomes important. But as always, do as you guys prefer. I think that's going to be it for me today. But remember, go to Steven's channel and check out his videos below. They're not as good as mine, but he's working on it. Anything else to add? All right, guys, that's going to be it from us today. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
By myself.